How you doing, folks? So you want to make some money on the internet, yeah? Anybody want to make £1 million on the internet? Sorry, I'm going to disappoint you. I'm going to show you how I made £5.5 million on the internet. Will that be good? Okay, let's get started. So a little bit of background on me. I used to work for a company called BT, worked there for 14 years until December 2003, and left there under the redundancy scheme and decided to start my own business. Started an internet business because I actually wanted something that fitted in with something else that I want to do in life that I'm going to tell you about in just a second. So I worked there for 14 years, and I got actually over 150 different income streams on the internet. I've got 11 different companies, and I've actually trained people to become millionaires too. And the last point really is why I left BT, because I'm now a part-time rock star as well, and I'll be sharing you some more of that with you. Okay, so this is why I left BT, basically. I had a passion, which was playing in a band, and I wanted to be a musician when I was a kid, and my mum told me to do A-levels and go and get a real job, so I did. And I worked for BT for 14 years, and finally, the passion escaped slightly a little bit later than I should have done. But what happened to me was I was playing in this little pub band, and we just used to do gigs within about a 10-mile radius of our home. And I lived in Gravesend in Kent at the time, if anybody knows it. And we never got further than 10 miles from home. And then about 6 years ago, I was just chatting with my mates in the band, and we were saying, how do we actually get any bigger than this? Because we're all too old to be famous now, and we're too fat. And we thought, why don't we start a tribute band? Because tribute bands are good, and they get to tour around the place, and it's the next best thing to being a pop star. Short of going on X Factor anyway. So we started a tribute band to Coldplay, and we started doing really well and getting lots and lots of gigs with this band, and it just opened my eyes and thought, you know what, I'd rather be doing this than working for BT. So the redundancy scheme came up, so I thought, sod it, I'm just going to take a year out, I'm going to go and be a rock star for a year and tour around with this band, because we got lots of work with this band. And I'll go and get a real job in a year's time. And I left in December '03, really didn't have a clue what I was doing. In fact, I even remember on my last drive home from work, stopping at a petrol station and buying a book called The Beer Mat Entrepreneur or something, because I was like going to read that, and I thought, I better read this and see if that gives you any clues, because I don't know what I'm going to do. And I started an internet business, and I'm going to take you through some of that story, but also tell you predominantly about traffic today, because that's what you're all here for, right? I started off by going to a seminar in my last month of employment, much like this one, although you can see it was a slightly classier seminar. This one had really nice velvet tablecloths and tables, which you clearly don't have here today. Also had water on the tables too. But it was a nice upmarket seminar. It was all about selling information products. And I really like the idea of selling information because there's huge margins in it. The guy running a seminar was selling sets of DVDs that cost £5 or £10 to duplicate for hundreds of pounds, £300, £500, even £1,000. So big margins, but the drawback was it was about selling with direct mail, actually buying mailing lists and sending out thousands and thousands of letters to people, trying to sell them stuff, and a small percentage would actually buy, and that's how you made the money. Unfortunately, that requires quite a lot of startup capital for that sort of business, like thousands of pounds, which I didn't have. So I didn't follow that model, but I just remember that little nugget of information, which was that information has got huge profit margins. Also around the same time, Bulgaria property was like really hot stuff. Some of you might remember when Bulgaria property became all the rage. Some of you might actually be Bulgaria property owners. And what I did was I researched Bulgaria and decided I was going to buy a property out there with some of my redundancy money. So I bought one. But I didn't actually go to the country myself. I had a friend who was buying one, so I sent him over there with my money, and he bought one for me. And it cost £4,500 freehold to buy a house with 2,000 square meters of land. And I thought that was quite a good deal. And everybody I told I just bought a house freehold for £4,500 was like, wow, where do I get one? So I decided to write an ebook about investing in Bulgaria, even though I'd never even been to the bloody country. I just wrote this ebook based on everything that I researched for free on Google. Okay, so everything in this ebook I found for free, just sitting down for about 20, 30 hours. And I started selling this ebook, and that set me on this path, because that started selling 20 copies a day for 20 quid a copy, which is a £400 a day cash machine. And when you got one of those, what do you do next? You do a few more, and another one, and that's how I ended up with 150 of these bloody things. So this is what my first webpage looked like, a simple one-page website which just sold this ebook, and it just listed the 10 chapters and said, this is what's in it. I've got this ebook all about Bulgaria, and I mean, let's just pick a couple of these chapters at random. Chapter 1, Introduction to Bulgaria. Do you think you guys could all write a few facts about Bulgaria if you just went to Google and typed in Bulgaria? Not too tough, is it? Chapter 4 is regions of Bulgaria. That whole section came from the Bulgaria Tourist Board. I just sent them an email and said, I'm doing a guide for UK investors on Bulgaria. Is it all right to use some of the content from your website? And they replied, sure, as long as you don't change a thing. That's what I like. So that whole chapter came for free. Next chapter is traveling to Bulgaria. And I just thought, how do you get to Bulgaria? You can fly there. So I looked at the airlines and found out which airlines flew there and how often, how much were the tickets. Then looked at other ways of getting there, which is basically cars, trains, and boats. And just researched all that stuff on the net. And in about 2 hours, got another chapter done. Cost of living. Just looked at the cost of basic commodity items like a loaf of bread, a pint of milk, eggs, electricity, and just looked what do they cost in the UK, what do they cost in Bulgaria, put them in a big table. There's another chapter done. Chapter 7 was maps. You could all find some maps on Google, right? Chapter 8 was the buying process. This is the hardest one of all because this is the legal process for buying property in Bulgaria. Now remember, I'd never actually been there, let alone understood the legal process very well. But because I'd bought one, albeit at arm's length, I had dealt with a solicitor that spoke English. So I said to him, could you write a chapter for this book I'm writing on the legal process to buying property in Bulgaria? In exchange, I'll let you put your name and address details at the end of the chapter. And he said, yeah, certainly. So he wrote me a whole chapter that explained their equivalent of land registry and local authority searches and all that stuff for free. Chapter 9, where to buy from. Just a list of Bulgarian estate agents. Really easy. Just go to Google and type in Bulgaria property for sale and you get screens full of the stuff. Just list them all in a chapter and that's that one done. The funny thing about that chapter was I actually got approached by one of the companies that were listed in there a few weeks after I launched this book, and they said, could we advertise within this ebook that you're selling? And I said, well, I suppose so. So what we'd like you to do is put our company name at the top of your directory and put a box around it and say that we're your recommended estate agent. I said, okay, yeah, I could do that. And I said, how much would you charge us for that? Now, I didn't have a clue at this point, so the first number that came to my head was £1,000. So I said, £1,000? And they said, where do we send the cheque? So you can actually make money advertising within ebooks that you're selling for 20 quid a time too. That was an interesting learning point for me. Chapter 10 is a directory, a list of useful resources for those thinking about buying in Bulgaria. It's basically a list of all the websites that I went to writing chapters 1 to 9. So very, very easily put together. Now, ideas for these businesses are absolutely everywhere. So that first idea for Bulgaria property, the reason I bought a property in Bulgaria was because I saw a newspaper story saying it was the hot new Costa del Sol. But there's another couple of newspaper stories there that in fact, what you're looking at on that screen is about £400,000 that I made from 3 newspaper stories. So the second newspaper story was one about a squatter winning rights to a £1 million flat in Hampstead. Some of you might remember that story about 4 or 5 years ago. And I read this newspaper story and thought, how the hell can a squatter be given a £1 million flat? And that led me to the Land Registry website, which explained the Land Registration Act of 2000. And I basically just made an ebook out of the legal process for squatters' rights and claiming unregistered and unused land and property. And the one on the right there is a funny one still. It's a plumbing course. And I've sold absolutely loads of plumbing courses, but I am no plumber. I don't even know how to change a tap washer, if I'm honest. But I just saw a newspaper story about a city trader who gave up his job and he was on 100 grand a year, but he gave it up to become a plumber because he's going to make more money. So I just thought, there's probably money in doing some sort of training products around plumbing. So where can I get some information about plumbing from? And I didn't know anything, so I just researched on that, found free stuff, but I also sent a guy with a camcorder into a college and got him to film a plumbing course and made a video-based product about teaching people how to do plumbing. So ideas are all around, and a great, no, that's 3 from a 30p newspaper, so that's quite a cheap business idea research tool. Here's just a few of my websites. We're going to talk about some of these later. But basically, I've got lots of different websites. I've got lots of information product websites, what I call one-page wonders or mini sites, which just sell one product. But I've also got some membership sites, and also got some websites which sell physical products. And there's one on the side there selling air conditioning plant, for example. Quite appropriate today. But what happened was, after I've been doing this for 3 years, and I actually made 2 million quid from the spare room in my house, people around me started saying, how do you do this? I'd like to do this too. And the first person that I trained how to do this was the drummer in that band, that Coldplay tribute band, a guy called Rick. And Rick was a fireman, and he said, how do I make money on the internet? I said, well, the obvious thing is you're a fireman. Why don't you just make an ebook out of how to become a fireman? Because you know all about that stuff. So he did an ebook on how to become a fireman, which we started selling and sold well. And then he did how to become a policeman and how to become a paramedic, because he rubbed shoulders with those guys all day long too. And then he's just added on more and more and more. So he's got over 150 income streams too. Each one of his income streams is actually a career guide, and he's got everything from becoming an airline pilot to an actor to a model to a veterinary nurse, all of those things. And he's actually done over £1 million himself and won an HSBC Startup Stars Award on the way. So you're looking at 1/4 of the world's richest tribute band on stage right here, because we've got 2 millionaires in the band and we're working on the other 2 right now. But anyway, let's talk about where does traffic come from, because I'm now going to move on really and talk to you specifically about getting traffic to your business. So this table just shows you where is most of the traffic. And actually in the UK, and people vary about this, there was a BBC survey recently that said it's over 90%, but Google has got about 80% of the market share in search traffic in the UK. It's absolutely huge. And the other guys, you can see the graphs there, you know, whereas Yahoo just a couple of years ago was 20%, it's now 10%, so that's halved. So really you've got to be on Google if you want to be anywhere. That's the really important one, and it just becomes more and more important all the time, and the other guys are just paling into insignificance, really. Here's a good little tool, Google Trends, google.com/trends. If you're thinking about going into any market, just go to this thing and type in a keyword phrase that you think people interested in that will search for, and you get a pretty little graph like this that shows you what is the trend of search traffic in that market over time. We use this a lot to decide, is it a good idea to get into this business? And for example, this is a good example of one that I thought would have been a growing graph. It's actually kite surfing, which is one of these extreme sports that people do. And I thought extreme sports is like a growing market, and people are really getting into extreme sports. But you look at the trend on that graph, it's actually gone down every year for about the last 5 years. So you can get some interesting stuff. I had somebody recently, one of my students, wanted to do a guide on cider making. And their idea was to do this and launch it in January. And we came and had a look on here, and it's a really interesting graph, because basically cider making, the number of people searching for that phrase is absolutely flat for 3/4 of the year, and in late summer it goes up, and then it tails off, and by Christmas it's gone again, and it doesn't pick up until late summer again. So some products are very seasonal too, and you can find that on here as well. So where do I get traffic from? Well, the main places that I get traffic from are these. I started off my business just using Google AdWords, and I'll talk to you about that in a bit of depth just in a second. Google AdWords is where you pay for Google to show your adverts down the right-hand side of the screen. You've all seen it on Google. Then I progressed to using search engine optimization, and the reason I started doing search engine optimization was I started spending so much money on Google AdWords. I actually got to the point of spending £60,000 a month on Google AdWords, which is a huge amount of money, but it's okay if you're making 200 grand a month. It doesn't hurt half as much. But when you get to spending that much, you actually think, what if I could get free traffic? I could actually put 60 grand back on the bottom line. But I still think it's very, very important to start your business with Google AdWords, because it's instant traffic. You can literally put up a website and you're getting qualified traffic there within an hour. And you're getting traffic for tens or hundreds or thousands of keywords. Even if you optimize your website and you get on the first page of Google, you might get there for a phrase, you might get there for a couple of phrases. It's very unlikely you're going to get on the first page of Google for the top 300 or 500 keyword phrases that you want to rank for. So Google AdWords is very much still part of my business model. But search engine optimization, and we're going to talk about some ways of improving that both on-site and off-site. Talk about how do you get good rankings with video. Got some interesting results on that I'll share with you. Talk a bit about Twitter, and we're also going to talk about outsourcing too. So Google AdWords, this is what it is. It's the ads that you get 1, 2, or 3 at the top of the page, and adverts all the way down the right-hand side. A couple of quick tips. Some of you might have an idea what you want to sell. Some of you might not have an idea what you want to sell. So if you're thinking about, is this a good thing to sell, a really good tip is just go to Google and go search for that thing, see what the competition's like. By that, a good thing to do is count the number of adverts down the right-hand side. And if you see that right-hand side column is full of adverts, and at the bottom it says more sponsored links, click on that more sponsored links, and it'll take you to another page that tells you how many competing adverts there are for that particular business. And in some markets, there's like 1 or 2 advertisers. In others, there's like hundreds. So it can really color where you actually decide to launch your business. Well, here's my credentials for Google AdWords. This is one of my 5 Google AdWords accounts. It is the biggest one, admittedly. But I've actually